The tall grass of the prairie trembled gently, not because of the wind. A dry sound, like claws scraping packed earth, stopped and then continued, very close. In the mouth of the small burrow under the bank, a fox kit held its breath. Its ears stood up, turning slowly like two antennas. The sharp smell of wet fur, the smell of newly turned earth, flooded the burrow entrance with each gasp of air. A shadow swept across the burrow mouth, broad, low, silent. The kit retreated deeper, belly pressed to the floor, hind legs tucked. It could not see the passerby, only feel the weight in the footsteps. When the sound receded, it let out a small, trembling breath. Outside, that familiar smell was absent. A few days before, that smell would always return with light footsteps and steady breathing. The smell of milk, the smell of the mother's fur, the smell of fresh, warm prey. Now, the burrow entrance held only old, dry claw marks and a streak of slipped earth, softened by the night rain and then hardened again. The kit lifted its head and licked its lips. Its stomach convulsed in waves, pushing it toward the entrance. Spring prairie is wide, flat, with little cover. The burrow sat on the edge of a mound of earth, looking out over a strip of short grass and sparse bushes. By day, light made everything exposed. By night, darkness turned everything into sound.
The kit crawled out and stayed out longer than a single beat. It stepped, then stopped, stepped, then stopped. Each time it stopped, its nose lowered to the ground, drawing a long breath to read what remained. The mother's old tracks, stepping over its own, looping and then vanishing toward a shallow stream bed. It followed, back slightly arched, tail lowered, a gait both curious and wary. At the stream's edge, the smell of cold water overpowered everything. The trail was broken. The kit lifted its head, shook its ears, and heard wings beating in the distance. It turned back, ran a few paces, then halted as if testing for a response. There was none. On the third day, hunger came faster. It began to chew anything soft, young grass roots, a piece of bleached bone, a wing of an insect. Its tongue touched soil, rock, bitter flavors that could not nourish a growing body. It learned the first lesson by its empty belly. It must find something that can run. A vole poked its head from a hole. The kit froze as if nailed, eyes wide. It lifted a front paw and held it for a very long time. A motion repeated from the times it had watched its mother hunt. Then it lunged, too soon. The vole vanished. The kit buried its face in the ground, inhaled dust, and sneezed repeatedly. It lifted its head, looked around, then returned to the same spot, flattened itself, and waited. This time, longer, quieter. Afternoon fell, shadows lengthened. That was when the first danger returned. A new scent spread over the grass, warm, heavy, mixed with coarse fur and meat. The grassland wolf had passed by, unhurried. On the soft earth near the burrow, a large, deep footprint appeared, its edge still sharp. The kit approached, sniffed once, and jerked back as if shocked. It ran in a circle, trying to find its own scent again, then darted into the burrow, lying pressed to the wall, ears still taut. That night, a distant howl repeated in waves, as if to remind that this bank had no owner. The next morning, the weather changed. Wind whipped hard, bringing a short but cold rain. Water ran in thin streams down the burrow mouth, carrying loose earth. The kit stood at the entrance, hesitating. Hunger pushed it out, but the wind shredded every scent. It managed a few dozen steps when a piercing shriek tore across the air.
The shadow of a golden eagle swept over the grass, fast enough to make the prairie seem to darken. The kit froze, then dashed for the nearest bush. Not a good bush, only the only place. It pressed itself close to the ground, crawling rather than running, seeking a gap under thorny branches. Above, the sound of wings flapped, and then fell silent. A little later, farther away, a sharp bird call. The kit did not move until the wind shifted. It learned to watch the sky, not only the ground.
Over the next week, its range widened little by little, driven by hunger. It left the mound, crossed a strip of hollow grass where many strange tracks and the strong smell of dung marked the way, roads of larger creatures. It kept to the edge, not the open. When it heard a rustle, it stood still instead of running. When it smelled fresh grassland wolf scent, it changed course immediately, circling wider even if it meant more walking. Once it caught a large beetle. Another time it clamped down on a baby mouse, an awkward snatch, but enough for it to chew slowly, eyes closed for a few seconds. Energy returned, but not for long. It was still small, still light, still a dark dot easy to lift from the ground. Late afternoon, when it returned, the wind again brought the familiar scent of a predator. Not one, but like a whole trail. On the mound's slope, new tracks overlapped old ones, heading straight for the burrow. The kit stopped at a safe distance, not entering immediately. It went around, slipped into the burrow by a narrower side entrance, a crack it had once used only for play. In the dark, it lay still, listening to the prairie breathe. It was alive, but it no longer followed the old path, no longer stepped out when the sky was too calm, no longer lingered where the smell was heavy. Absence was not filled, it was replaced by a new habit, small, tight, economical. Outside, the grass trembled again. This time, maybe it was the wind, maybe not. A sharp quiver made the burrow roof fall like a rain of earth. The kit sprang up, nose full of mud, eyes narrowed in the dark. Cold water streamed across the burrow floor, rising quickly to its belly. It spun toward the main exit, only to find a slab of thick mud sealing the mouth, quivering with each surge of water pressing against it. No wind seeped in, the smell of raw earth choking. It darted for the side crack. The gap was so low its ears scraped the rock. It pushed with its shoulder, claws digging. Mud stuck like glue, pulling back each time it withdrew a paw. It breathed hard, its warm breath condensing into a thin mist. Water kept rising. When the level reached its chest, it gave a small hiss, shoved its head through the crack, belly scraped by stone, then wriggled out. Above ground it was dark, though it was only late afternoon. Rain lashed sideways, drops hard as gravel. Wind tore the grass flat, exposing yellow stubble. The kit staggered, fur matted and heavy with water. It did not stand and run. It crawled, close to the ground, following a newly carved water channel, seeking higher ground. Each step risked its hind feet slipping, claws failing to grip the soft mud. A dry thud sounded right behind. A sinkhole opened. The kit flinched and shot forward, too hurried. Its front feet missed into a hole of cloudy water, icy cold. It clawed out, but the slide left a long streak of mud along its flank. Its scent spread, clearer than the scent of rain. It halted beneath the low bramble, panting. Ears up, then down, it heard heavy, steady footsteps cutting through the wet turf. The grassland wolf appeared as a gray shadow in the rain. It did not rush, it walked, head low, nose sweeping the ground. It paused exactly at the streak of mud dragged from the kit, sniffed, then turned, its direction corrected, straight toward the bramble. The kit did not run. It flattened itself so its belly touched the mud, then wriggled backward, inch by inch, slipping under the tangled thorn branches.
A thorn hooked its ear, tearing a thin line. It yanked hard, hot blood mixed with cold water, the metallic smell flaring. The gray shadow came close. The wolf thrust its nose into the bush and inhaled deeply. The kit held its breath, chest contracting, but did not move. It only pulled its hind legs more slowly than a raindrop, backing until its body touched a hard clump of earth. There was no way back. It turned its head, looking for an escape. Only a small gap where roots had been hollowed by water. It slipped into that space, body flattened. At that moment, the wolf's muzzle poked where it had been lying. White teeth snapped through the air, grazing a thorn. The wolf jerked its head, the thorn flying. It backed off and sneezed. In that instant, the kit slid out of the gap. Not straight. It darted sideways, cut along the water channel to break the scent, and disappeared behind a mound.
The wolf did not pursue it once. It returned to sniff the water channel, its trail erased by the rain. It walked more slowly, shook its head, then abandoned the direction. The kit did not stop. It ran until its lungs burned, then kept to the edges of dense clumps of grass where its body was half hidden. Darkness fell fast. The rain eased, but the wind grew colder, slipping through wet fur and making it shiver. It began to forage, not from want, but because its feet forced it to. It lurked out of a hole, motionless, one front paw raised. Wait. Nothing. It moved to another earth mound, smelled old dung, dry earth, the sign of a tunnel. It waited again. Empty. It dug, claws scraping sticky clods, but the tunnel ran deeper. After a few digs, it stopped, breathed, and gave up. The wind quickly filled the hole again. It tried a hollow of grass where insects often surface after rain. It licked a tiny bug, the bitter taste gone in an instant. Not enough. It chased a cold grasshopper that couldn't jump high. It leapt, too close, too soon. The grasshopper popped from the edge of its mouth and vanished into the grass. Stomach clenched. It veered a short distance from the dense patch to cut across a smaller open gap. A small mistake. It looked up late. There were no wings, only a dark shape gliding across the ground like a cut. The kit flung itself down, but was an instant too slow. A gust fled through its raised fur. Claws scraped along its back, not sinking deep, but slashing a long line. The hot pain made it spring up reflexively, running wild, hind feet throwing up plumes of dirt. It did not run back to the gap. It plunged into a thicker bramble, accepting thorns tearing along its flank. It burrowed in, pressed flat, breathing in short bursts. Overhead, a sharp cry, then the sound of wings receding. When silence returned, it slithered out. Its back was wet, smeared with mud and blood. It moved with a lower posture than before, each step avoiding stretching the tear. It did not look up long. It just glanced and then bowed, choosing paths under dense shadows of grass. At the mound's rim, where there had once been a burrow entrance, there was only a dark gouge, waterlogged and glittering. It stood there a long while, nose to the ground, inhaling once, then drew its head back as if chilled to the bone. It turned away and did not return. Night fell without a roofed burrow, without the familiar smell to return to. It found a shallow hollow under a bramble, curled up, tail over its nose. The tear on its back throbbed with each breath. It was still alive, but from now on, each step carried a price. No fixed shelter, and each run reminded it that the sky had touched it. The grass trembled again, out of sync with the wind. At the prairie's edge, an adult fox paused in the same manner as it had as a kit, a front paw lifted, nose lowered to the ground, ears turning slowly to measure the space. That motion had once saved it from talons above and jaws below. Today it repeated not for hunting, but because a scent had just returned. The smell of coarse fur and warm meat, the smell of fresh dung laid in a long streak, the smell of a species that claims a path like a drawn line, the grassland wolf.
The fox did not retreat. It carried a responsibility as heavy as its scarred body. Behind it, in a hollow under the bramble, little hissing sounds and short breaths of newly opened eyes. They could not move, could not run, did not know to look up at the sky. To live, they needed milk. To have milk, it had to hunt. To hunt, it had to leave shelter. And each time it left a scent. It took a circuitous route, not a straight one. Its path traced the edge of thick grass, where a body vanished halfway. It chose hard ground, avoiding mud so its footprints would not be deep. It crossed a dry channel, sliding over like a low shadow, trying to let the wind carry its scent off course. Every economy learned from the days after losing the burrow, every lesson about sky and ground, was used again, not a beat wasted. But the wolf's scent continued to come closer. Not fast, only steady.
Dusk fell. The flat light made the prairie look exposed, like stretched skin. The fox returned, carrying no prey large enough, only a vole and a few tough scraps found on an old carcass. When it was a few dozen paces from the shelter, its ears caught a heavy rustle. Not a mouse sound, not a bird. A gray shape separated from the grass. The grassland wolf did not rush. It walked as it had during the rain, head low, nose sweeping. It paused, sniffed a spot, then corrected direction, straight into the bramble. The fox halted, its body lowered, not to flee, but to block. It did not utter a growl, only a short snort, and its eyes widened, trying to keep distance. It stepped sideways, a slow step, cutting the path. The wolf raised its head, looked, then lowered its nose, moving on as if the fox were only a soft obstacle. Distance shrank. The fox lunged forward, not a long killing pounce, but a quick jab at the wolf's muzzle, aimed at a sensitive spot. It skimmed across, then withdrew, avoiding a lock of jaws. The wolf snapped its head, recoiled half a step, then retaliated with a fast, low swipe. The fox dodged by doing what it had learned from surviving eagles, pressing itself to the ground. The teeth scraped its back, catching thick fur and old scars, tearing a new line. It did not stop to feel the pain. It cut to the side, leading the opponent out of the bramble, out of the direction of the hollow. The wolf followed, heavy and persistent. Each time it paused to sniff, the fox changed direction, running sideways along the channel, leaping over small earthen banks to erase the scent trail. There was no miracle, just a series of reflexes piled together, quick glances at the sky, listening to the grass, reading the wind, staying low, not letting itself be boxed into an open spot. Finally, the confrontation had to end in rough contact. The wolf caught up on an open patch of ground where the grass had been flattened by wind. The fox could not slip into thorns. It spun, charged straight into the opponent's chest to throw off its momentum, then rolled aside. A bite caught its shoulder, not to the bone, but enough to tear flesh. It jerked away, separated, ran uphill to a mound and paused at the top, holding the higher ground for a beat. The wolf stood below, panting, eyes fixed. It did not fall back or leave out of fear. It considered, then finally turned, slowly walking off in another direction. Not a defeat, merely a shift of target in a long night. The fox remained, blood soaked through fur at the shoulder, the metallic scent strong and hard to hide. It returned by a wider, farther detour, until the heavy footsteps were no longer audible. When it slipped into the bramble, it did not walk straight into the hollow. It paused at the edge, quickly licked the tear to mask the scent, then crawled in. The small mouths found it, latched on. It lay on its side, breathing short. Milk still flowed, but its body lightened with each hour. That night it did not leave the shelter despite the hunger.
A few days later, new paths began to appear around the bramble, smaller footprints mixed with its own. Those routes hugged the edge of thick grass, avoided open spaces, and paused in the same rhythm, a front paw lifted, nose lowered to the ground. The wind changed direction. The tall grass trembled lightly again. In the dusk, the adult fox left the hollow by a narrow side route, body low, melting into the grass like a dark streak. After it, a small head poked out and then drew back, repeating the exact motion of waiting in silence without understanding why it must wait. The small head drew in, then poked out again, raised a front paw and set it down to the exact rhythm the mother had taught, a silent lesson etched into the flesh. In that instant, the sunset cast a thin band of gold over their backs. All wounds, all evasive steps, all survival cunning became a continuous flowing line. Life continued not by miracle, but by constant adjustment. Habits tested, scars used, gait corrected. Each individual was only part of that current, sliding through, leaving a wake, and yielding to the next beat. And the prairie kept breathing, gentle and relentless. Disclaimer: the descriptive section recreates observable natural behavior and was reconstructed by AI for entertainment and relaxation purposes. The content may not be entirely scientifically accurate.